Welcome to the Intentional Encourager podcast, where each episode brings you compelling conversations and stories designed to entertain, enlighten, and encourage. And now here's your host, Brian Sexton.
Hey everybody, Brian Sexton. I am intentionally encouraged when I see people doing business the right way. And for the last 15 years, Damon Burton and his team at SEO National have done just that. Now you might say, Brian, what can they do for me in my business? I'm going to tell you what they can do for you. They can help you understand search engine optimization. There are a lot of players out there in the marketplace, but you want a team of people that are going to be dedicated to working with you and helping you to understand search engine optimization and how you can show up higher on search engines so that you can bring more revenue into your business. Damon and his team are full of integrity, honesty, decency, and trust. And if that's important to you and that encourages you, I would encourage you to give them a call today at 855-736-6285 or go to SEOnational.com and get a free quote and tell them you heard about it on the Intentional Encourager podcast. Get ready for a dynamite conversation coming up right now on the Intentional Encourager podcast. And welcome into the Intentional Encourager podcast. I'm your host, Brian Sexton. Thank you for joining us again today. Part 2 of this episode with my buddy, Nick Dorsey, podcast host, mentor, speaker, leadership and culture builder, social impact volunteer, host of the All Things Gratitude podcast. You can find him on LinkedIn at Nick Dorsey, Dorsey, but you can find him right here, right now on the Intentional Encourager podcast. Nick, man, part 1 was great. I can't wait for part 2. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. I mean, it's been a long little 4-minute wait there between shows.
As we record this and we release this episode, yeah, it's the magic of podcasting. Let's start here, and I want to pick up, and I'll get into your story here in just a minute, but I want to pick up something from the first part of our conversation where you were talking about conversations with guests. I'm one of these type of guys that, and I'll use the world of sports, for instance. I would love to sit down with Tiger Woods and talk basketball with him.
That would be interesting.
And that's what I'm saying. I would like to sit down with a guy like Joe Burrow of the Cincinnati Bengals, who grew up a huge basketball fan, and talk NBA with him.
Yeah.
Because people are going to ask Joe Burrow, hey, what happened in the Super Bowl? How come you got sacked a bunch in the playoffs? They're going to ask Tiger Woods about golf type questions. Where I find intrigue with athletes, and a lot of people, would talk about Aaron Rodgers. I think Aaron Rodgers is such an interesting interview because he takes a conversation in so many different directions. He's so nuanced and able to go that way. When you think about conversations you've had with guests, and you were talking in the last episode about just being free and wide open, are there conversations that you've wanted to have with people that are outside of the norm? How do you feel about guests and conversations outside of their sphere of influence?
I think it's good because it highlights the guest in a different way. It makes them, for me, I look at it, it makes them look more human, if that doesn't make sense. They're just not stuck in this one area, and people can relate to them more. I like doing that. I like reaching out a little bit past their comfort zone just to see how far they'll go. But I will stop it if they look uncomfortable, and they don't like me, It's just, like I said, we were talking to a lady about a copywriter, does all this stuff. Then for some reason we brought up an alien, then we brought up a pyramid, and holy cow, that just spurred off, just totally off what she did. But it opened her up. That episode opened up to something just totally different, thinking outside the box, and people not just seeing you as one type of person. People actually seeing you, hey, wait, I can relate with this person, even though I have nothing to do with copywriting skills. But over here, this would be a fun conversation with that person. So opens them up to new connections, and you never know. Takes one person to change your life, Brian. So you never know. You might find that one person in that type of conversation.
Yeah. Well, who's somebody that you want? I mean, without, and I know you mentioned you wanted, in the rebranding of the All Things Gratitude podcast, you want to have some different people on. Who's one or two people that you would just kill to have a 30-minute conversation with on your podcast?
Oh man, you said one, Tiger Woods. Such an interesting life, but I don't know how deep I want to get in and outside of golf with on some things. So that might be a tough one, but I think Steph Curry would be interesting, and on a sports related wise, because of the fact smaller guy shoots lights out all over the gym.
Yeah.
NBA's never seen anybody like that before. But what he does outside of the NBA, all the charitable work he does, he's huge into golf with all that stuff. His wife does the cooking stuff. There's so much more to him. But what does 99% of the people in the world know him as? A three-point shooter, an NBA champion. So I something like that. And I don't care where we are right now. I'm not using this as a political thing, but whoever's the president of the United States, I think would be a cool interview at that time.
Yeah.
No matter who they are, just because of it's not really the person, it's the position.
Yeah.
I remember once Air Force One flew over us. It was a president I did not care for, and I just stood there and looked at him. They're like, "What? I thought you didn't like that person." I'm like, "It's not that. It's the position. It's Air Force One. It's right there. It's that." I don't know. I mean, that's a good question, Brian.
Well,
you make me think, but I'm a sports guy, so I want more sports.
Well, me too. Well, me too. I would like to. You and I were talking before we started recording about Ken Griffey Jr. You grew up in the Seattle area. I grew up a Reds fan. Of course, he played in Seattle and then played in Cincinnati. I'd like to sit down with Junior and go, take me through the moments of uncertainty in your career. The first 10 years of your career, you were on top of the baseball world. And then you get injured. And there's the uncertainty of, okay, you get injured once. Okay, I can come back. You get injured a second time. Do doubts begin to creep into your mind? Take me through the last few years of your career when you weren't the same player that you were the first part. I want to know more of the internal, man, what were you thinking, feeling? How did you keep yourself going? How did you keep yourself encouraged? Things like, I mean, to me, those are the kinds of things I'd love to know.
It'd be fun too with him piggybacking off King Griffey is, hey, growing up, being in the dugout with your dad and all those players playing catch with them and everything. How was that as a kid?
Oh, man.
Being able to have access to that. I think for me, that would be like, whoa, because not every little boy, a lot of people in this world growing up dream to be some type of professional athlete when they're first learning how to play sports.
Well, yeah, athletes want to be rock stars and rock stars want to be athletes. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, that first time I remember when I was a little kid being on the sideline of a high school football game when I'm 6 or 7 years old, I just thought that was the greatest thing ever. Then I had the opportunity to be on a sideline in a college game, just the greatest thing. Then it was an NFL game. That was the great, it's just like, as I'm getting older, it was getting better, and I just want to know, what's it like playing catch with like Joe Morgan and I think Johnny Bench back then, all the big red machine. How was it just to hang around them in the locker room? I know you probably couldn't tell some stories, but how was it just, just being around those people and just listening to them? How do they treat you? Were they really cool? Just stuff like that.
Well,
I think
and here's
really interesting.
Nick, forgive me for jumping in there, but again, it kind of touches on, and I promise we're going to get to your story, but it touches on something that we talked about before about legacy is Joe Morgan passed away last year. Pete Rose will be 80 years old, I think, next year, or he might already be 80 years old. Johnny Bench is in his mid to late 70s. Tony Perez is in his mid to late 70s. Even Ken Griffey Sr. in the mid to late 70s. These guys are getting up in years. Junior's over 50 himself right now. You're not going to have these people around much longer to be able to talk about and share those things. And I remember several years ago, we went to a Reds game, and they were honoring the Big Red Machine, and all 8 of those guys were there. Pete Rose, Johnny Bench, Tony Perez, Joe Morgan, Davey Concepcion, George Foster, Cesar Geronimo, Ken Griffey Sr., Pete Rose. They called them the Great 8. And I still have that picture in my phone because I'm like, now I look at it and I'm like, yeah, Joe Morgan died last year. Mm-hmm. People are gonna pass away.
Hey everybody, Brian Sexton. Prices are going up by the day. We've got to find ways to increase our household revenue. Now, a couple ways you could do that is, one, you could go and ask your boss for a raise. But if that doesn't work, I've got another way for you. It's my friend Joe Hart's program called Products for Profit. Joe's been a guest here on the Intentional Encourager podcast and told his story about how learning retail arbitrage changed his life, and he's been helping thousands of people change theirs. Now, retail arbitrage is simply this. It's taking a product and buying it and then reselling it online for a higher price, and you keep the profits. And guess what? Amazon and Walmart use third-party resellers every day to fulfill their customer orders. I want you to go to productsforprofit.com or productsforprofit.carrd.co. Get connected to Joe's team. Tell them you heard about it on the Intentional Encourager podcast and start making money today with Products for Profit. And now let's get back to more great conversation on the Intentional Encourager podcast.
I think Sparky Anderson already passed away, the manager of that team. But you're right, man. It's the legacy and the power of those stories to be preserved for when Ken Griffey Jr. is 75 or 80 years old.
Yep, exactly.
And his kids and grandkids, and it's the connection of, and they're starting to pass away more and more, but, seeing Babe Ruth as a kid, somebody that's in their 90s and it'd be like, oh, I saw Babe Ruth play. Babe Ruth's been dead for 75 years. He's been dead 75 years.
Yeah.
And that person still has that connection when he was alive and in his prime. And man, I just think we lose the power of those stories. And I think that's what podcasting does, is it preserves and protects a lot of those things. Forgive me for going off in a tangent there, but
no, that's perfect. I love it.
But do you feel with your podcast, do you feel a responsibility to promote and preserve stories?
I feel responsibility to promote the person that's on the show. So if that is some type of story, then absolutely. The podcast is not for me. It's for the person that's on. If you're on my show, it's for you, Brian. And it's for the people out there listening. Like I said earlier, people know who I am. That's why they're tuning in, because they saw it on my posts. They're connected to me. They know it. So why talk about me? Let's talk about you. Sounds like a song. But I think you do to a degree, depending on how far your reach out is. But like I said, it takes one person to change someone's life. So I do try to make it in a way that we're putting out a lot of information and we are highlighting that person, because, hey, I've had a nurse on the show. I've had these organic healers, but you know what? That works for someone, and it might have changed their life. And that's cool. I had a voiceover actress on, and all of a sudden she got a handful of people, calling her, reaching out about doing voiceover stuff. That could have changed one of those people's lives.
Yeah.
I don't know all the back end stuff there, that's between them, but, I think it's just making that connection and reaching out, because if someone is listening to this and they feel a deep connection to me for some reason, they're going to reach out to me. And maybe I can help them by just saying, hey, just be yourself, and this is how you talk to the camera. This is how you talk to the microphone, because I'm not going to claim I'm great at any of this. I'm not. I just have fun. But if people like it, then right on, then I'm doing something right. That's the way I look at it. So.
Well, and Nick, that's the thing is that, it should be, I'm the host of the Intentional Encourager podcast. But what makes the Intentional Encourager podcast, is the caliber of people that you're able to bring on and find out more about them. And so, man, that's a great place to pivot, because I want to find out more about you. Take me back as far back as you want to go. I want to hear the story of your life, some challenges you've overcome, some things lessons you've learned. Man, I just want to give you the next little bit to just kind of tell your story and make this part of the conversation about you and your life.
I grew up, I was a typical jock playing every sport I could. Hit high school, pretty successful, so very thankful for that. Go to college. Hey, I found college a lot of fun. Probably not for the right reasons. You know, partied, we had fun. We partied some more and had some fun. Played rugby. Got hurt. Played rugby some more. Partied some more. Ended up dropping out of school. So come back home. I coach high school football, my old high school, and needed a job. But I was that young little punk who thought the world owed me everything. It would just fall into my lap, and bam, money grew on a tree. Boy, the real world kicked me in the butt really quick. Went to go work. A guy I coach's dad owned a plumbing company, so I went there. I dug ditches, drilled holes for 2 years, my friend. Just complete labor, complete crap, dude. Just hated it. But I was always showing up late to work. I was no calling, no showing because I was partying. You know, hey, we're not going to do this. One day, owner came over to my house and basically said some choice words I won't say on here. Gave me a coming to Jesus talk pretty much, and kind of changed my life right there. Started focusing more on work. Gave me an opportunity. Should have fired me. Should have fired me a ton of times. Gave me the opportunity to be a lead, manage some of the warehouse stuff, you know, start working with the clients directly, start working with inspectors and everything. Did I fail a bunch of times? Yes, I did. But guess what I learned? I figured out how to learn from those failures and not put myself down.
Do you think you would have? I got to ask you this, man. Forgive me for jumping in there.
Nah, it's all good.
Have you thought about how you would have handled you in that moment, or if you would have said something differently to you? Because I noticed when you were talking about that, you were like, man, that was the come to Jesus moment for me, where he should have fired my butt. And he didn't, but he lifted me. He should have fired me, but he lifted me. Have you ever thought about if you could step back, if you would have said something different to you, or was that exactly what you needed in that moment? Could you now have done what he did for you then?
Today, yes. 15 years ago, I would have been tossed up how I would have reacted towards someone. All being honest, you know, I've been in leadership roles for the last, 15, 16 years, and when I first got into it, I had that little, hey, I'm your boss, blah, 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 kind of attitude, because first time I was in a position like that, I learned really quick. It doesn't work that way.
Well, yeah. Well, here's the thing, Nick.
So
yeah, here's the thing too. And forgive me again, man, but I just, you were a high school football coach, and so you knew how to coach guys up. But there's
motivate them in a football
way. Well, that's where I'm going with that. There's a difference. There is a difference in what we would say in air quotes, coaching somebody up. Okay, you and I have played sports. I know what the definition of coaching somebody up is. It's actually lighting somebody up.
Yep.
And just saying, listen, I'm going to motivate you by either lighting you up or taking away some playing time. One of those two things is going to light a fire under you. And if not, you don't deserve to be here. But for you, you had it was different in that moment. What was that moment like that really lit that fire? Was it more of a coach type of attitude situation, or was it more of putting your arm? Because there are times you have to, good coaches know this, and you've learned this over time, I'm sure. You know when to grab, and forgive me for saying this, but again, the world I grew up in, you grabbed a kid by the face mask and said, come here, man, I want to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
And you got in their shorts, so to speak. And there are times the great coaches know how to do both. They know how to get in the guy's shorts, and they know how to put their arm around him. Was that for you in that moment when you had that come to Jesus with your boss at that time? Did he get in your shorts, or did he put his arm around you?
He put his finger in my face. Bam, bam, But he got the point across. And now, and that's what I needed. Yeah, my parents could have told me anything they wanted, but we know how it is. We have kids. We're always wrong.
Yeah.
Kids always know better. Then when they get older, like, man, you're right. I go, because you're going to go through the same thing with your kids now.
Yeah.
It's just circle of life, I call it. It just happens, Yeah, it was something that needed. And Brian, like it was like 6 years later, I ended up going to, after I became a manager then in a casino, got promoted up. Went to a show down in Vegas, a conference, and I was able to be in the you had a draw to get to the keynote speaker and everything, and I got into that limited space, and I remember, and this is where everything changed for me, dude. This is where another changing moment. He stood up there and he's like, "How many of you have had a horrible manager in your life?" And people are scared to raise their hands. Their managers were in the room with them. He goes, no. It doesn't mean this job, just any job. So, almost the whole room raised their hand. He goes, then he put off a bunch of these different phrases. Have you ever heard these? Everybody's like, yeah. And he goes, do you hate being degraded? People are like, yeah. Do you hate doing this? He goes, okay, now remember all those times and never do it to anyone else. That's what will make you a great leader. I was like, huh. He goes, remember all the shitty managers and don't be them. So it even thought about coaches and everything. All this stuff went through my head that night, just thinking about that. I'm young, into new leadership positions and everything. I wanted to be that guy that everybody liked. But I need to put my foot down. It's just because you're young, and that's what you think it needs to be like. Because we were coming out of a generation, that's where it was like. It's my way or the highway kind of thing. And learned a lot from that. And then that's where I'm like, okay, compassion, gratitude, and empathy needs to be my style. And I started doing that like 10, 15 years ago. And looking back to what my boss did, the Coming to Jesus talk, I'd always say, working my way from digging ditches all the way up to executive leadership positions. The only way I did that is through compassion, empathy, and just treat people like humans, not numbers, and that's when I say my story, it's what my story is I was a complete failure. I didn't understand life or anything, and I was able to build my way all the way up to an executive level. And that's what I want to tell people. You can still do it. It's there. You just got to work hard at it, but you got to know how to make the proper steps. You don't need a big fancy degree. You don't need all this. If you know how to do your job correctly, somebody's going to value it, somebody's going to see it, and somebody's going to take that risk, and you're going to live a really good life. Because there's a lot of people who struggle in this world who can't go to college or don't have this because they made mistakes when they're younger, and I want to give those people a chance if I can, and I've given a lot of team members chances like that, and a lot of them have succeeded, and I'm very proud of that, and I'm very fortunate for that, and I'm very fortunate to run across them because they made me better.
It's
that's how
almost,
I look at that.
Well, here's the thing, Nick. It's almost like, and not almost like, but it's like, hey, had somebody not given me a second chance when I screwed up so royally, and I feel the same way you do. You almost feel like you have to pay it forward because in life you get those second chances, and it's like, how are you going to capitalize on it?
Yeah.
Well,
here's a big one, Brian. So think about it this way. This is how I think about it is, I had an opportunity to better my career. So that was leaving the place I worked at. And I was scared to tell my boss, because she gave me a lot of opportunities to get me to where I was. And I went and talked to her, and she sat down. She's like, who do I need to call and talk to? And it just blew me away, because you know how it is. If you have a good employee, you hate losing them. And a lot of people want to keep them as much as possible. And guess what? If you tell them no and don't help them, they're going to find something else and leave and just kind of screw you over on the way out the door. Sorry. This way I was kind of like, I looked at that, everything she did for me. She called the recruiter. She called the place. She wrote letters of recommendation, and I'm just like, now I'm looking at people and I'm like, I tell my team members, like, come tell me if you need to go somewhere. Let's talk about it.
Hey everybody, Brian Sexton. You know, dreams are powerful pieces of intentional encouragement. We all have them. If you're a business owner, you've probably always dreamed of taking your sales to levels you've never seen before. I've got a guy that can help you with that. His name is Brad Norwood. My good buddy Brad has been on the Intentional Encourager podcast as a guest before, and he is a dream specialist. His company, Dream It Pro, offers incentive packages to travel to places such as the Masters, Kentucky Derby, the Super Bowl, even exotic places that you've always wanted to take your team, but you just didn't know how to do it. Brad's your guy. And oh, by the way, Brad's a certified bucket list coach, so he can help your team members achieve their personal dreams as well. I want you to go to www.dreamitpro.com and find out more, or call him directly at 479-466-6907. And by the way, tell him you heard it on the Intentional Encourager podcast. Let's get back to more great conversation here on the Intentional Encourager podcast.
Because if we can't promote you within the house here and we can't do that, I'm not going to stop you from furthering your career. And if I don't do that, I feel like a hypocrite because that was all done for me. So what you're saying earlier, that's where that story comes, because it's like I was given those opportunities by some of my people who are in leadership positions above me. If I didn't give that back, man, I just feel like a hypocrite. And you never know. Those people might end up coming back and working for you again somewhere down the road in that higher position to give you even more value because they remember what you did. That's the thing. Nick, that's a lost art right now.
Well, no, and it's 100% right, because I've always said this. There's a vast difference between value and appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
People are getting tired of tokens. Well, here's a token of my appreciation. We're getting tired of tokens. We want to know, hey, do you value me? Am I somebody you can't afford to lose?
Mm-hmm.
Am I somebody that really makes an impact in this organization? And what you said there is so powerful because, and again, I think it ties so beautifully to your story, is somebody found value in you even when you couldn't see the value in yourself. Even when you were off partying like a rock star, not showing up for work, being late, somebody goes, but you know what, doggone it, I can't replace this guy. So I'm going to have to light him up and get my finger in his face because I can't afford to lose him, because there's potential there and there's talent there. And what I sensed when you were telling that story is that obstacle in my life became the thing that has driven the last 15 years of my life.
Oh, it's been longer than that, but absolutely.
The gratitude.
That changed everything.
So let me ask you this. How do you transmit gratitude, and how do you continue to pay it forward from what somebody did for you? And has there ever been a time that it was hard for you to do that?
I left a job to come to Arizona. That was hard for me because we built such an amazing team there. And I felt like I was letting them down, which I wasn't, because I got to take care of myself too, but that was one hard time. It's a good question, man. I've had so many team members that have been influential towards me, just in different ways, and that I've been able to help, because you never know. You never lived in somebody else's shoes, Brian. You never walked in their steps. You didn't grow up where they grew up, and you just don't know what they've witnessed or seen. People come from abused families. People come from single parent families. Some people, lived on the streets, some people fell into drugs and alcohol, but they turn out to be just amazing people on the backside, and people don't give them a chance because of their past, and I just feel, given that past, I'm not saying I was at that point in my life that was that bad, but somebody gave me a chance. I've given multiple people chances. I've given somebody a chance who was in prison for a long time for something that was a major mistake in her life. And she came and worked for us and just turned her life around. And I'm proud of that because, nobody else would have gave her that opportunity. And then when I was leaving the place, everybody wanted her to go work for her. And these were all the same people that didn't want to give her a chance because I gave her that chance and she proved her value. It wasn't me proving her value. She proved it because she put in the work. We guided her in the right direction, but man, she just put in the work, and it was like finding a needle in a haystack with her.
And some people just dig themselves out of those holes, Nick. They just
she realized it.
Yeah, there's just something that you were talking about coaching high school football. There are times, and you know this from being a coach, there are times you have to let your team dig itself out of its own hole.
Oh yeah.
You can't coach it out of them. And I've said this about encouragement, and what you just said is really important. I said, look, no coach in their right mind, if their team's down by 3 touchdowns, no coach in their right mind is going to go to the sidelines and goes, boys, we're down 3 scores. You might as well just take your gear off. We're done. Mm-hmm. We can't score on these guys. We can't do anything. We're going to put the scrubs in. We're going to put the second string in. Forget it. We might as well just pack it up and go. Until the game is out of reach, those coaches are coaching as hard as if they were up 3 scores. You don't take your foot off the gas because you never know, especially in football. And I've said this before, the NFL, the game, it's a one-play league. Mm-hmm. One play can change a game. One play can define a career. One play can end a career.
Yep.
The football is the ultimate one-play game. Mm-hmm. And so I love what you said there, and forgive me for jumping in there. It's digging it out. It's finding it. I'd be remiss, though, if I didn't ask you to share your biggest piece of intentional encouragement with people. So if you don't mind, I want to ask you to share that with the folks and as we wrap up our conversation.
My biggest piece of encouragement. Yeah, good question. See, you didn't ask me the question before, so I didn't have time to think about it.
Yeah.
Encouragement. I just think as a leader, I think the biggest thing I do to help people is I treat them like humans. I said this earlier, treat them like humans, not numbers. Because it's amazing when you start to get to know people and you learn about their families, about their lives, what they did. It encourages them to become a better person, a better employee, a better team member. And I think just building up people. I don't know if that's exactly what you're looking for in an answer, but I mean, that's what I look at is just helping people, making them become better and helping them not make the mistakes I made.
Yeah.
I mean, mistakes are good because you learn from them, but some people don't know how to learn from them. They put themselves down so much. So if I could see that beforehand and stop it before it happens and make them better, I want everyone that works with me or for me, however you want to say that, to strive to be in my position. I want them to take over my position one day. I think that's what makes a strong department. That's what makes a strong team. If you have a bunch of people with the same goals and aspirations, and if it's my time to move on from the company, I'll go find a job somewhere else. It's fine. But if one of those people fit in, awesome.
Yeah.
It works, so it's building people, especially in this time. Mental wellness is just off the charts right now. So if you can find people, encourage them and help them, I think that's the biggest thing. And just motivate them. Just give them some motivation. Tell them they're good. Tell them hi. Send them a text.
Yeah.
Just check in. It's not hard to do this stuff. That a simple text can change someone's life too. Just like football, one play, one text, one phone call.
Yeah.
You never know.
I love it, man. I love it.
Yeah.
Nick, again, tell folks where they can find you. Tell folks where they can find your podcast. If you missed the first part, you should go back and listen to the first part. You should not have it incomplete. Go back and listen. If you missed the first conversation we had, go back and listen to it. But Nick, tell folks where they can find you and find the All Things Gratitude podcast.
Find both of us on LinkedIn, All Things Gratitude Podcast, Nick Dorsey on LinkedIn, Anchor, you go there. It's out to Spotify, all those fun places where Anchor sends everything out. But yeah, if you go to my LinkedIn page, everything's right there. You find everything. So that's the only social media I'm on. It's the only one I like. So it's the only one that drives my business well. So that's what I go with, and I enjoy it. So, so that's about it, Brian.
Man, Nick, this has been so cool. It's been a blast.
Yeah, it's a great time.
It's been bet. I knew it was going to be good. I didn't know it was going to be this good. And again, I so appreciate and thank you for joining me today on the Intentional Coach Podcast.
Thanks, brother. Have a great day, man.
My thanks as always to producer Bryce Sexton and technical advisor Matt Means. And of course, the ultimate thanks goes to the Lord Jesus Christ, who provides intentional encouragement every day through his word. If you're not subscribed to the Intentional Encourager podcast, hit the subscribe button wherever you get podcasts so you don't miss an exciting episode where you can get encouraged and stay encouraged. And remember, anyone, anywhere, at any time, any place can be an intentional encourager.